last week we talked about skeletal structure. We were talking about how the skeletal structure of, where is her face, of this lady here was based off the pull and push of gravity, her pushing against gravity in her vertical stance, gravity pushing down. We see all the collection of fat here. Let me change my brush. The fat collection responding to the gravity, pulling it down. We see how the body is built to anticipate the pull of gravity. It's designed in a way where it can anticipate the horizontal pull towards gravity and how that affects anatomy. This week, today, this class, we'll be talking about, my bad. We'll be talking about muscle structure and how it wraps around bones. And I talked a little bit about it last week, but I wanted to sort of elaborate on it. And this is going to be really, really important. I can sit here and help you memorize the muscle structures on a body. I can help you figure out where the pectorals are and how they're connected to the deltoids and how the trapezius responds by helping the upward pull, and all that is for later because we've got around 10 classes altogether this month. But today I really wanted, one second, there's a cat here. I really wanted to focus on the way muscle wraps, and that's a very key word that I wanted to show you guys. Wraps is the word. Okay, so wrap. It doesn't sit, it doesn't hang. It wraps around the around the skeletal structure. Not only does that provide the skeletal structure support for sudden blows, like if you were to be punched, if you were to be smacked with a sledgehammer, I'm sure your bone would break. But there is a certain amount of distribution of the force through the muscles, and muscles are supposed to respond to that distribution of energy or force and assist the bones in maintaining strength. So one big thing that I stressed last week, and it's the only thing that you should ever possibly need to help you understand anatomy, and that's function. We are active beings. We act. We need these things not just to be able to draw them. We need them for action, for function, to be able to function throughout life, to lift a heavy object, to go to the grocery store and lift a can off the shelf. If you remember the function of these muscles that I'm going to be showing you, you'll be able to understand them even better. And the active animation of that muscle in the middle of the function that it's responsible for will help you illustrate it a lot better. So remember, the point is, you can barely read? Okay. Sorry. All right. So, what was I saying? I want you guys, when you go in and research and observe and do studies on the way biceps work, let's say, I want you to think about the way the bicep moves in the middle of the movement, because it's like having a reference, and it'll also help us enhance your imagination, enhance your visual thinking. Visual thinking, as you already know, is really extremely important to being an artist. You have to think visually. Okay, so two videos that I wanted to show you. The first video is how to knead dough. And this is something I really need you to think about, because muscle isn't solid. And I know some of you have been using Pose Maniacs, and I've said this many times about Pose Maniacs. It's good for the general gesture of the figure, but it's not good for showing stacking and fat distribution. Remember, there's two distinct things in figure drawing. There's fat, and then there's muscle. Fat is the excess, it's basically what self-explanatory. Fat is the stuff that hangs on top of the muscle. Fat really doesn't assist the skeletal structure. Here you have all the muscles. This is the bone, let's say, and this is all the muscle wrapping around the bone, assisting the bone, keeping the bone solid and stable. This is your bicep, let's say, and this is your fat muscle, fat storage up here on your arm, and this, let's say, is your bone. You got a little bit of triceps here and here. This fat storage here is outside of the sort of the function of muscles. That's why it's not good technically for your health to have that much excess fat, because it's sort of you need more energy to move around, and it really doesn't give back. But the more energy you use to develop your muscles, you gain more muscle weight, and then you get stronger. This fat here is different It acts differently in drawings than muscle does. Muscle is very defined. If you're drawing a person who is very muscular, it's much sort of, not really easier, but it's much easier to grasp the idea of their muscle structure. It's easy to find where the biceps and the triceps are. However, fat, if this person that I'm drawing here had a very fatty arm, there would be very, very little muscle structure and be more fat. And this is stuff you have to know that you're doing when you're drawing an arm. If you want to draw something muscular, you probably all have this cliche idea of bubbles. You guys just put bubbles in between and then form the lines around them. And then add a little bit of shades here, barely following the references, and then you guys got like, I don't know what that is. Basketball, you know those bags, beanie bags with the basketballs in them? What I want you guys to think about today after seeing these videos, I want you to see the difference between muscle and fat. Muscle doesn't, it does stack to a certain degree, but it stacks at its own individual place. Muscle is form. Muscle has specific form. Muscle can exist without fat. But fat needs something to hang on to, and fat is like it's clingy. And so the way it forms in a drawing is very differently, and you'll understand this when you look at this video. This is a very tough looking, I don't know what kind of bread he's going to make, but this is basically what I imagine when I think fat. It stacks, it hangs, it gets pulled by gravity. Like I don't want to create some sort of, rude environment here, but I wanted to show you an animation of a fatter person walking than a skinnier person walking. You can see all the responses to gravity and the way it hangs. It has no specific tightness to it. So look at the way that this fat stacks. It changes shape. Of course it's dough, but let's just use this as an analogy or a metaphor. This is something that my husband told me about this video. Do you see how it responds to the pressure? If it was very, very saggy, let's say if it was a saggy piece of dough, you'd understand again how it hangs and responds to the pull of gravity. Let's say how to make pizza dough. I was going to write DOE, illiterate. Where's these people that like throw it around and like they do like this crazy throwy thingy with their pizza dough? Basically what I want you to see is I want you to envision this pizza dough. I want you to envision it. When you think about fat, next time you draw a fatter person, think about where the density is in this person's body and where the lack of density is. The lack of density is areas that if you push them, they bounce right back. But muscle, if you push muscle in, it doesn't bounce right back. It's freezing on me, but I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. Now this, I just explained what I believe fat acts like. So fat, if you had a stick, let's say this is a skeletal structure, and you had the fat would hang depending on, like it's just literally hanging. If you were to throw it around and toss it around, it would just flop around the way you would normally see a fat person's arm flopping around. For skeletal structure, this is the analogy that I use, and this is what I think about when I think about muscle structure. This guy's really funny here. But I'm not here to laugh at his joke. Do you see how after he threw the water, after he filled the towel in with the water, the towel gained weight? It gained a very distinct weight to it because it was saturated with water. And when he wrings it, let me show you here. This is the tenseness. This is the tenseness that I want to see when you guys draw muscles wrapped around bone. This is what I want to see, the way the way he's wrapping it around the bone. This is how muscles work. Hold out your arm right now as I'm talking. Hold out your arm in front of you and then twist your right arm, hold it out in front of you. And then close your fist and then move your fist inward counterclockwise. Do you see the way that it looks like it's ringing? This is what function reveals to you. Function reveals form. Function reveals purpose. And when you guys see the way that your muscle responds to the fat, the way you guys see the muscle responds to the bone and function, then you understand, oh, okay, well, next time I draw this bicep. If this person's arm were to twist, this bicep needs to act like that. Okay? So does everyone see what I'm saying? Does everyone see? Exactly. It attaches, it wraps. This is the key word. What does muscle do? Muscle wraps around bone structure. But if you won't know where this muscle wraps around the bone structure, if you don't understand the function of the bone, where in these bodies is the bone responsible for weight, for carrying weight? Well, your biceps are one big part. Let's say this is your elbow here. The bicep area, these bicep areas here, this one first part here, is responsible, again, like I said last week, responsible for that upward pull against gravity when you are holding like 10 pounds. This muscle is responsible. So this means that if you don't understand the skeletal structure and where the skeletal is designed to bend and twist, you won't understand where to wrap and how to respond. Let's say you're drawing foreshortening, and this is one big problem a lot of you have, and you guys want to be able to draw a guy holding a sword pointing it at you. If you don't understand this wrapping, this towel, the wringing of the towel that is involved with muscles, and the way the towel, when it's wrung, it responds to as if there was a stick inside, and then you were wrapping the towel around it. The point is to understand in different movements, muscle acts differently. Some of you think that muscle is fixed, that if you were to draw a muscle or an arm that is in foreshortening like this, you guys think that here's bicep, here's a tricep, here's the second bicep. However, this is wrong. The real way to understand how this muscle will turn around the bicep is to remember this essential wrapping clue, or this tip. Let's call it a tip, because I don't know what to call it. A theory, philosophy, it doesn't make any sense to call it that. But as you can see, the triceps are pushed more this way. The biceps are pushed more that way. They're responding to the twist of the arm and the necessity of keeping the arm straight. They're assisting the bone and keeping it straight and keeping it stiff and solid. So, do you guys see what I'm talking about? Does everyone see what I'm essentially, the differentiation that I'm making between fat and muscle? Yeah? Does everyone understand what I'm saying, or are you guys just concerned about past tense of words that don't make sense? Okay. Now, with fat, now what I'm going to do later on is I'm going to be breaking down a figure, and I'm going to be drawing it in front of you just in a bit. But I want you guys to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The next thing is, I've already shown you the way fat responds. Fat responds by hanging. But basically, it's just a bunch of fat that's held together by the skin. It has no structure, and it's just storage. It's just excessive storage that plays no purpose in the general movement of the body. So you have to place it in places that don't make much movement or aren't responsible for much. There's a reason why our triceps are flabby, but our biceps aren't. Our biceps have more movement. Simply just lifting your arm in the air is the use of your bicep. But we use our triceps much less. And that's why all fat collects there. So when you break down, all this information applies into understanding this. When you look at this girl, you understand immediately. This is the fat storage. This is the muscle. A lot of you just memorize. There's 2 bumps on the top and 1 bump on the bottom. But that's not enough for you as an artist, especially if you want to venture into the world of professionalism. That's not enough. You have to learn that there is a skeleton here, built more towards the tricep than the upper area. More muscle needs to be on the top to support the leverage or the movement upward. This movement right here that we're seeing. Muscles are in play to keep this movement higher. This muscle is bulging higher because the movement is required. There's a higher lift in her arm pulling against gravity, which is the downward pull here. So all of this is responsible. And this little bump here, this is not triceps. If she had really powerful triceps, there would be a very, very distinct solidity in her arm on this side. But because we know of the fat distribution and the way fat distributes around the body, if you guys see a muscular person, let me just show you. A really muscular person, this is how their arm would look like if her triceps were a bit more toned. But that's not how it looks like. Her triceps look like this. Do you see the fat storage? This is stuff I want you to be able to see when you look at a figure. So that next time you have to draw a figure like this, you know, okay, her arm, there's muscle here and there's muscle here. But when I get to her triceps, I need to show that there is a bit of fat here. So the best way to do it is a simple curvature hanging off the solidity of the skeletal structure and the muscle structure. Michael. Ussie, what do you want? Ussie. Us. What do you want? Troublemaker. She finished her nap and now she wants to cause havoc. Okay. So, let's do this. Excuse me, mustache. Okay. So this is just for arms. Imagine all the other different areas and clues that you can find for other forms of figures and other ways that fat is distributed in a figure and how to successfully draw it. So what did you learn today just in these first 15 minutes or 10 minutes? You learned something very valuable in your figure drawing process. Next time that you draw something, you'll remember this. Essential fact. When I'm drawing a figure, I have to remember that this figure has areas that are fatty versus areas that are dense, and I am responsible for showing that. Okay? So for those who are offended, let me give her some underwear. Excuse me, sorry lady. Okay. Muscle wraps and fat hangs. Very well done. Muscle wrap and push fat displace when they are larger. Okay, thank you. No, oh no, butt crack. Don't give her a G-string. It's not a G-string. Oh God, I have to edit all this out for the YouTube video. Fat hangs and muscle wraps. Okay. Okay. So let's create. So last week I'm gonna skip through and I'm gonna do some things that you guys haven't seen yet, or some of you. I'm going to skip through the gesture. I've already explained the gesture. I've beaten the crap out of gesture and explanation of gesture and skeletal structure. So let's focus primarily on this arm here, this arm. So I basically drew my gesture lines. Give myself a very basic. The spine leads to the neck shows me where the head is. Some of you draw the head first. It's really not a good idea. I erased it because I drew the head. Finding where the spine is will lead you to where the head is. That's another tiny little tip. Finding the spine will lead you towards the neck, which will lead you toward the head. And it will lead you towards the head in symmetry, so that you don't have to worry about drawing the head first and spending an hour trying to figure out the head shape and then following along. I know that the head makes sense to draw it first because it will help you figure out where everything is. But if you find the general big movements here, if you find the big movement, you'll know how much space you've taken up on your canvas, and you know where to place all the other small attachments, like feet and hands. Okay, so I got the skeletal thing going on. Now I'm just going to find... I'm just trying to figure out the bend of her shoulders. Okay. So let's just play with it like that. I'm sorry if it's a little bit stylistic. The fat content here, very obvious. Do you guys understand it now? When you see it, it's like a book. You start reading it. When you first look at something like this, when you first look at a figure drawing this complicated, you're going to be like, oh God, I have to get all this done and I have to figure all this out, and then you're going to try to show where the fat is of the shoulder blades, and then you're going to try to figure everything out in this nice fat collection here, and I'm going to get to that in a second. I want you guys to be able to break these things down so that when you do go into the figure drawing, you know how to read it. It's like a book and you read it through. I spend a lot of time in finding angles of the head. Why do teachers get angry if I drop PPs on the blackboard? I don't know what you guys are up to. The next thing that comes after skeletal structure is the muscle structure. And over here I'm going to try to find where this muscle structure is. So I'm going to think about this here. It's very, very easy to pick up the pattern. Very, very easy. There's another muscle here, built this way, and this area is all bone, so I don't have to worry about that. And as I've told you last week, there's a shrinking that happens with your feet and your wrists, your ankles and your wrists. There's a serious shrinking that happens where the feet can start, and that's because it requires dexterity. And your hands work with very small subjects, so you can see how everything shrinks. Your arm turns into 5 fingers, and then your fingers have these little tiny nails. They're all designed to act with different sizes around you. And the larger the muscle, the larger the weight that it's expecting. So the muscles here are large. Not on the arm, not in the hand. You might think that the hand would require a lot of muscle or be very large. But it's designed, it does have muscles and tendons, but it is designed to work with smaller weights, such as lifting a pencil or lifting a purse. But for arms, which are a larger piece which is a larger limb, they require larger, basically, it's very self-explanatory, they require larger muscles. Okay? So now we get into the tricep area. Triceps are very difficult to work with. This is the main reason why, because people forget that fat storage happens a lot in triceps. And this gentle little curvature here in her arm is looked over a lot, and I see it looked over a lot in your figure drawings. If I were to be the one drawing this, I would skip the muscle structure entirely for the triceps, because there is no basic muscle structure for these triceps. Her triceps aren't very well developed, or they don't show entirely, and I would just skip straight into the curvature of her tricep. Other areas where fat collects versus where bones and skeleton collect. Bones and muscle. The spinal column here has entire bone structure to a point where it's visible. It has no overlapping muscle or fat storage. The spine doesn't have much to deal with weight-wise. It does have muscle structure, but enough that it can function singularly. Rib cage here and here is visible. And you guys understand the function of the rib cage and all that I've talked about it many times. And the fact that all of the ribs can either be covered in fat or covered in muscle, but they are still visible because they are grooves into the skeleton, but protruding from the side of the spine. Then you have the bend here. This bend is a bend of muscle, not of fat. Some of you treat it as fat, and I see this big bulge into the drawing when you guys actually do end up painting this. I see a misunderstanding. It becomes a very quick, not a quick gradual tone such as here. You guys create a very large movement. You guys think that it's one of the curviest spots. Let's identify together here where the fat and where the muscle is. This is all fat. This is fat. This is fat. This is fat. This is fat, and this whole area here is fat and muscle. This is muscle. This is muscle, 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 fat. Skeleton. Skeleton, 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 and one big chunk of fat right here. Okay, and this is fat. You have to treat this differently in your drawing than you treat this. This requires more form. This requires more three-dimensionality. This requires a lot of thought. Things that are, I've changed the symbol if that helps. Things that are muscular have a very three-dimensional aspect to them. The arm becomes very square-like. If you guys have read those Bern Hogarth books, he explains it so beautifully. He refers to this three-dimensionality in it, and whenever he starts a painting, he never forgets this. So that's why his sketches look so incredibly three-dimensional, and they move and they have form. This is because muscle is so dense. Remember, density and mass and density pull together to create one big object, and depending on the structure of the bone, which can be right over here, they form around the bone, wrapping around the bone, and they create this general square-like technical shape. So similar to the way Hogarth is doing it. He gives us very square-like shapes to start with the arms, and then he places different grooves for the arm structure, leading us into creating the upper part of the arm, let's say, over here. However, believe it or not, you don't have to worry about three-dimensionality with fat, because fat is exceptionally, the most important thing you have to learn is that fat hangs. And as long as you have the 3 dimensions and all the other sides shaped together, you guys can create the image of fat or create fat. So how does fat hang off of this? It becomes very easy to emulate 2-dimensionally. All you have to do is think about the way it's hanging and that it hangs in uniform down towards gravity. Okay? So does everyone understand this? This is very, very important. I know it might be very basic, but I see a lot of misconception and a lot of confusion when it comes to drawing figures that have fat versus figures that have muscle. And when you're drawing males as well, you have to learn about the different ways male bodies distribute fat than female bodies. And I talked last time about the way male bodies anticipate different kinds of weight versus female bodies. And that's one of the biggest things. Some of those other channels, I regret to say, don't talk about that. I don't know why, but the only thing that they do tell you is that women are bottom heavy and men are top heavy. So women have a smaller top, and it's really not that simple. It's about fat distribution. It's about where the body in female and male anticipate weight, where weight is going to be held. And I know some of you here remember what I was talking about, pregnancy, and how the body anticipates it and keeps the lower body heavier so that it can lift the weight on the top, which is above the pelvic area, which is where the pregnancy happens. So yes, does everyone know what I mean by fat hanging versus muscle wrapping? Does everyone understand this? Yes? Do I have any questions so far? Are there any questions? Okay. Next thing I want to do is show you a picture. I don't know where I found it. I'm just trying to find it. I don't know where I put it. Okay, let's just use this one. This dude. He's very muscular. Very obvious fact. Is there any place here that would be easy to draw? Meaning, even for me right now, I wouldn't take on this kind of thing without this reference. I wouldn't try to create a body this muscular and this three-dimensional and this dense. Dense is the key word. Without a reference. Because not only do I have to know the exact place of these muscles, I have to be able to incorporate the three-dimensional aspect. What does this mean? It means that these muscles are so well formed, especially when you guys have to draw really muscular characters later on. These muscles are so well formed that there's no space for error. There is no fat content hiding where the placement of these areas are. So when you guys, and I've seen so many of these, when you guys draw a muscular arm, it looks very wrong because you guys don't realize what you're drawing. You guys don't realize that you're drawing the exact anatomy. These people have shown off their muscles. What does it mean to work out your muscles? It means that you're trying to display them in their glory, meaning you don't have absolutely any bit of fat that can hide the development of your muscles. A lot of people get away with, a very muscular looking body, even though they do have a certain fat content, just like 10% or 15% was just a good way to go for. But these guys have almost 5% fat content, even lower than that, which is crazy. If you can imagine what these guys go through to develop their muscles like this. And when you develop your muscle to this level, you're revealing the exact placement of each muscle, which is why it's so appealing, because people can see each muscle has been considered in the weight training process. So even their tiniest little muscle over here, this tiny little muscle. Let's draw the arm first. The arm joint is held somewhere a little bit lower than the intensity of the bicep. The bicep responds after we find where the skeletal structure is. The skeletal structure stretches out of the bicep and towards the arm. Excuse me if my anatomy isn't perfect, but let's just try to... I think that's where everything is. Okay. This arm here is generally straight, so I can show you guys how the muscle is wrapping. And another layer, let me put it at 50 or 60, we're thinking about the way the muscle wraps. And so when I do muscle structure, I think about which muscle is the largest versus which muscle is the smallest. And there's always this muscle here that connects the elbow to the rest of the arm, because if all the muscles ended here and there was no gradual shrinking of the muscles, this elbow would be incredibly weak, and that's why elbows receive the most destruction. Not only is there like a tiny little bit of connective tissue between the two bones because they're not connected because it requires a bend, but because it is a bend. Imagine a building that had a joint in between it. This building, if an earthquake hit, would be a lot weaker. So you have to think about the way that muscle is even denser here so the body doesn't keep destroying the elbow every time it lifts something. Even with the joints everywhere else, there's an exceptional amount of muscle surrounding it. If you work out, you'll see that there's muscles there. If you don't work out, then you're just generally weak all around. I recommend all of you work out, even though I don't. Okay, so remember that there is a gradual shrinking of the muscles towards the end here. So another tiny muscle, and then another muscle here. When I find the largest muscle and go down to the smallest muscle, I'm able to fill in the rest. I'm able to think of the function that comes with the rest. And when you fill them in, think of it three-dimensionally. Okay? Think of the way this muscle isn't just big sausage. It's actually like this. It's like a big house. Okay? It looks like a steak, basically. It's got width, height, and length. Right? Width, height, height. Okay, anyways. It's got the Z, X, and Y axis. Okay, Z, Z, X, Y, Z, whatever. The next muscle that comes in is the tricep. Then this tricep leads us towards the bicep. The armpit is an illusion. It's a place where muscles don't meet, and it's a crevice between two large muscle areas. Okay, the tricep is connected directly to the lateral muscles, I believe. I'm not sure, lateral maximus or whatever. And depending on the structure or what this arm has been lifting, let's say you're designing a dwarf, and this dwarf is known for his ability to lift the largest axe in the land, and you're responsible for creating and designing this character. You have to think about the fact that he has certain muscle structure that has to respond to that responsibility. Okay? The next muscle, again, responding to the joint. Excuse me here, I think I've screwed up the length of the bones, but if you can bear with me, is the muscle in the forearm. The forearm, of course, is smaller than the upper arm. The upper arm is responsible for the true weight connecting to the pectorals, which is the boobs, and the side. I don't want to use smart words for those who haven't really studied it that in depth. One large muscle here, one large muscle here on the side. And then, of course, connective tissues and the elbow. A little bit of cleanup. One large little muscle here. If you were to make this person a very fat person, what do? Think about the same skeletal structure. Think about the way the skeletal structure has absolutely no muscle support, or maybe very little muscle support. But isn't that incredibly fat? So this person is still a little bit capable of moving. Again, no muscle, not much muscle definition, not much three-dimensionality. When you shade this, and you shade this realistically, of course you're going to have to shade it as one big, lumpy lumpy thing, and make sure that you have all the responsive secondary light source to reveal the form. But it technically has no serious edges. It has no rectangular base shape. And so developing is going to be a lot easier. And someone who is very skinny, as you might understand, but with very minimal muscle structure, let's say you're drawing a girl, very little muscle structure, so no bends except maybe a little bit of muscle structure here, but no serious muscles on the bottom area. And you know that this area is a fat storage area, so to show even more that they have very little fat storage, or give the skeletal structure a little bit more intrigue, instead of drawing it like this and making them completely skinny or adolescent or prepubescent skinniness, if the person is older, a little bit of bump here goes a long way. It's also very feminine to have this bump as well. This is the difference between basically a scrawny man versus a scrawny girl. There's always a little bit of fat up here. And again, it's all responsive to the biological responsibility of males versus females. Males have to worry about other things, while women have to worry about carrying the child. And so that's why the arm and the stomach and the pelvis and the thighs all anticipate weight to be lifted. Okay? So that's really what I mean. The way that muscle wraps versus the way fat hangs. And the way to really use this theory and this tip to its Maximus, to its maximal capability or maximal, let's say, efficiency, you have to start doing studies. If you don't do studies, you guys forget that when you do have to create this character for this commissioner or whoever it is, you're going to fail. Not fail technically, not fail in the general picture. I'm sure you're going to draw a very good arm, but you're going to fail in the technical aspect because the function isn't going to make sense and there's always going to be something missing in your drawing. So to really take advantage of the fact that you're going to be drawing a figure, I want to see, is muscle hanging? Is muscle hanging exactly, or is fat hanging? Is muscle wrapping, or is fat wrapping? And when I look at your critiques for today, when I look at the homework for today, I'm going to be examining that. Does it hang or does it wrap? Okay? So from now on, I'm going to be looking at that. And for the rest of your lives, for the rest of the practices that you're going to take on for figure drawing or whatever else that you're going to be responsible for when it comes to human bodies, if it's art, if it's art class, in some fine arts school, if they see that you've differentiated the development of these masses, if they see that they can actually hold the fat versus touching and examining the muscle content, then you're going to expand as an artist, and you're going to get higher mark in class. It's very simple. You have to represent the function. Function is key. At the end of this 10 classes, by the end of October, I'm going to be asking you guys to make one big piece for the class. And I'm going to be elaborating on it. Didn't want to release it till later, but I sort of want to tell you guys about it now so you can get ready and think about the way you guys can benefit from all the notes that I've been providing. I want you guys to create one large figure, and I'm going to be applying or marking. I hate marking, but I'm going to be marking this figure according to everything I've taught you. And this is one of the main things that you've learned today. That fat hangs and muscle wraps. If I see this function recognized, then you will increase in your mark or your feedback. Okay? Experience is simply the name we give to our mistakes. That's true. Okay? So what did we learn last week? We learned about the structure of the human body, how it's a vertical, and how to make something look stable. Stability is key. Function, stability, all of those essential, good things that come with a really well-made figure drawing, a really well-drawn human. And again, I can't iterate this enough. Function is the key to drawing a successfully looking body. If you guys think about the way this human body works, because humans are alive, they work. You're not drawing a vase, and I can do a whole class about drawing a vase, and it'd be a very short class. Humans, there's a lot that goes into the development of a human being, and when we go into color, I'm going to have to cover all the blood flow knowledge and how different areas have less blood and more saturation, etc. But the main thing that I want to say to you is last week we talked about stability. Stability still applies. Anything that I talk about here applies to everything else. There's fat in other areas of the arm that I want you to have experience with. Do studies and come back and show me that, okay, this is the fat and this is the muscle. I want to see the stability. Can these muscles support the skeleton, and can the skeleton support this muscle? Does it look like it can function if you were to breathe life into it? Think of the skeletal structure as one large trunk, and out of it move different or protrude different branches, let's say. So if you are drawing the leg or the skeletal structure of a thigh, everything else branches out of this skeletal structure, and we're given very basic, easy to draw function, which is the trunk. I'm sorry, my brain is like not working right now. But when it comes to the general form of the human body, all of these little aspects are things that stretch or move out of this essential trunk. And I'm going bit by bit on these trunks here, because when it comes to the basic thing that all of these branches come out of, which is the trunk, which is the torso, I want to know that you guys, the torso is generally the easiest thing to draw. I want to know that you guys can create the things that emerge from the torso, because as you might already know, all the movement happens there. All the gestures happen there. For figure drawing, you cannot do a figure that is in the middle of a gesture if you guys don't know how to create a drawing that is more than just the trunk. I see some of you say, oh, well, look, I'm not really in the mood for a gesture. Oh, she is in a gesture. She's standing, or whatever you guys are drawing. Usually all your characters have some sort of really like emo style stance. I mean, look at my drawings. Everyone's just standing around, not much emotion, not much movement, not much translation or language. And then once in a while, once in a blue moon, I see an actual drawing with movement in it. This is not, you won't be able to understand the power of gesture if you don't know how to draw these limbs that are responsible for the gesture. And the limbs that are responsible for the gesture, if you were to give it 100% responsibility, it would be the arms and the legs. If you guys don't become familiar with these muscle structures, what develops is a very stiff looking drawing. The torso is responsible for a large part of the gesture, and I will be covering that later on. But as for the next couple classes, there's a lot of things that I want to see. I want to see, of course, fat response to gravity, muscle, response to bone, and bone. Before you start drawing, use bone or the lines, the gesture lines, to form gesture. Gesture, in order to validate the gesture, you need to understand the way the muscle responds and wraps around that gesture. Okay? And you won't have a gesture unless you have the bone. This is a very, very, very refined list to follow in your work. If you don't follow this list, you'll fail. You'll have a very stiff looking drawing. If you don't follow this list, what will happen is that you'll jump straight into muscle and fat, and then you'll get something that looks like this. And I've seen this all the time, and it's really, really sad. You guys try to create a little bit of fat, and then you try to make this person look a little bit muscular, and I see this person, just jumping in without much planning. And essentially this is all planning. It took God 7 days to create the universe. So even he needs to plan, if you guys believe in him or not, but even he needs to plan. So don't throw planning out the window. Don't give it a chance. Don't just give up on it right away. Connecting all of these little limbs together to create one large gesture is what figure drawing is all about. When you go into your fine arts class or your figure drawing class and you see the model, next time you see the model and you're done with this 10 days of class, you're going to read. It's going to be like a book. Her arm is going to be like an open page, and what you're going to see, you're going to read. This is fat content. This is the muscle structure. All I'll have to do is a couple of lines here and there, a couple of strokes of this conte, and then I'll be able to create her form. And that's what it's all about, creating maximum form with minimal effort. Maximum form with minimal, I'm going to write it down, effort. Meaning the stroke value, stroke quantity. How much can you create in just a couple strokes worth of effort? Of form, sorry. How much form can you create in a couple of strokes? And that's what it's all about. I'm going to be looking at homework in a second, but homework is, I'm going to be having you draw a whole figure every time. I'm not just going to be asking for an arm. These kinds of specific spot practice is up to you. I'm not going to be assigning you an arm or a foot or a leg or a toe. I'm going to be talking about the general principles that come with figure drawing, because it's too much for me to request an arm this day, a leg this day, and not think about the general way these arms work. I will be critiquing arms. I will be teaching about arms, but I won't be teaching only about arms, because there's only so much you can talk about. It's not a biology class, it's not a medicine class. It's not, you're not trying to be doctors in bone or muscle structure, and you're not athletic. You know, I don't know what it is, those doctors that work with athletes. I want you guys just to understand very basic, very minimal, yet effective principles that will help you in your figure drawing career. Okay? So homework is still figure drawing. One figure, and when you draw it, apply the stuff you learned today to the figure. So the next figures that I see, I'm going to critique them on fat content and muscle content. I'm not just going to kinesiology. Oh yeah, that is kinesiology. One of my friends took that. So right now I'm going to be looking at these for you, and figure, face, figure. Okay, let me find some more figures. Just stop, save, accept. Okay. So fat content and muscle content, next class. This class, I asked you guys to create standing characters for this class. And I'm going to be looking at the stability. This first one here. And let me tell you again, if you guys haven't seen it, stability is me being convinced that this character can stand on its own. That this character's fat distribution is symmetrical, and that it can stand if it were to stand on both legs. This character has been considered from all symmetrical angles, and the main symmetry, or the kebab stick that I was referring to, has been considered. I'm going to be looking at just this character here, this individual. So let me, because I'm not sure if I have time to look at everyone's, but I'll try my hardest to. Okay, this character here. Let's begin with the gesture line that you used. The gesture line used here has misled you into believing that this gesture line is the symmetry line. Gesture lines for the spine are not symmetry lines. Do you guys understand what I mean by saying that? Gesture lines means it helps you figure out where this body is pointing. If you were drawing like a mermaid or something. This arm is all wrong, but if you guys were drawing a mermaid, the gesture line would help you determine where this mermaid has moved around towards. But when you're thinking about a human being and you're figuring out the gesture line, after you're done with the gesture line, what we get is just a guiding line. This line here that you've used has guided you towards creating the curvature of her stance. This is the guiding line that you used. It was an S shape or a C shape. What you did was use this guiding line as a symmetry line. This is wrong. Guiding lines are not symmetry lines. Gesture lines are not symmetry lines. Why? Because they are tilted. They are not helping you anticipate. They're helping you anticipate the movement. They're helping you create flow in a convincing looking drawing, but they're not helping you divide the fat equally along either sides. As you guys already know, the body is an exemplary, biological exemplary of symmetry. What did I just say? I want everyone to write it back to me. The body is the biological exemplary of symmetry, or however you want to say it. The body is symmetrical, period. The body is a symmetrical form. Every part of it is equal to the other part. When there are discrepancies between symmetry, that's when the body has illnesses, like for instance, like Perthes disease, or born with one arm, or etc. The body is symmetry. So how can you possibly consider yourself a figure drawing artist or go towards the figure drawing world, the world of figure drawing, without knowing this essential fact? This belly button here, is what's getting me into this fit. The way you place this belly button is completely wrong. The belly button, if I only place it in the right spot, look at what happens to the body after I do this. This first part here, very, very well done. After placing this belly button here. Look at the way the form responds. Really good job in distributing the breasts along the symmetry line, but all of a sudden you've placed the belly button here in response to this gesture line. This is wrong. The symmetry line runs like this, in symmetry along the body. Imagine a kebab stick. Imagine a bunch of pieces of cheese facing different directions, and imagine a kebab stick through it. Attaching these pieces of cheese on it. This is what I mean by symmetry line. There's an essential line that goes through the body that divides the body in half, that cuts the body in half. No matter where the body contorts, if the body contorts here and the pelvis is here and one thigh is here and the boobs are here, the symmetry line will follow. Okay? The symmetry line will follow this body and respond to the movement. The next issue where the symmetry is lacking, and this is one big thing, and I really want you guys to remember the power of symmetry, is the pelvic bone, the pelvic thing here. This thigh is in front of this thigh, yet there's no stacking, there's no folding, there's no layering. Layering is what happens when a big ball is in front of a smaller ball. Or, let me change that, a big cube is in front of a smaller cube. We see only part of that cube. This is the pelvis, this is the thigh mass. What? This needs to be in front of it. And I think she's in some sort of really weird position. Doesn't seem comfortable, but it can look realistic if you apply the right amount of muscle understanding to it and muscle wrapping. But look at the difference now in the way this body reads versus the way it looked before. You thought that the body faced a different way. Remember that the belly button, the reason why I instantly knew this was asymmetrical is because the belly button sits on top of the symmetry line on the body. Okay? It sits on top online. It sits on top of it. This is a signifier. It's like one big clue. Hello, it's a clue. It's like a clue to answering the big question, how do I draw this body? It's a clue. And if you guys don't think about this, if you guys don't think about the symmetry, you'll have a drawing that looks a little more morbid, anatomy-wise. If you were to paint this realistically, what's going to happen is you're going to jump into the uncanny valley head first, because you're going to have different proportions going on. And yes, okay? So remember, whoever's this is, please remember that there is a symmetry line. So if you were to have the body, legs, excuse the sausages, there is a symmetry line that cuts through everything. Alright, and the symmetry line follows the body wherever it goes. Alright, so very good job on this, and the other ones were really, really well done. You have the general movement, but the anatomy is lacking. Okay? So don't forget the symmetry line. For next class, so basically what I was saying here is that the stability has failed because the symmetry line seemed out of place. As for the fact that it might look like it's standing, this foot here is a bit too large considering where the knee is facing. If the knee is facing this way, then it could make a little bit of sense. She's doing a little bit of a ballet stance. However, your knee was facing this way, or this way. We're facing us. So this means the foot has to follow in suit. And you can make it respond by keeping her standing, but still it would look a bit off. If you wanted her to make it seem like she was in the middle of a dance, what we would have is the torso, the movement, and the leg in front, and the other leg behind. The other leg in front with the knee facing us and a nice bend to help translate that gesture. But you have a bit of a confusion here. It's going this way, ready to sort of create a very nice balanced ballet look. So what you wanted to do, maybe, is create something that looks a little bit like this. more of a tip, or like a, like a little suggestion of a ballet stance instead of an actual bend. You had a bend that was facing the wrong direction. The knee can't bend in that direction. Okay, so I'm going to flatten this and I'm going to send it back to you. Remember, symmetry line is important. Very, very important. Next up is this drawing here. Okay? So, you drew this, right? This is an outline? Or you drew it? You have good lines here. Line weight is a bit challenged here. The weight of the line is way too high for the strength, way too strong for the size of the figure. So we're losing everything in the outline, and fat distribution and muscle distribution are confused. Over here, line weight again standing in the way. This is a really good sketch. Structure. Okay, pull, very well done. I see no suggestion of fat storage, which is fine because I only taught that today. But as for stability, stability is really well done. And how do you test that? Equal amount of weight and distance between the standing stability line. This is not a symmetry line. It's sort of balanced symmetry, but it's not symmetry. And I can see that you've appropriately covered this, and that the foot is in stability with the rest of the fat storage. The fact that this has more weight is made up by the arm sticking out this way a little bit further, explaining the fact that she's in her, gliding balance position. So well done translating the form here. I like it's beautiful, this showing of the sides as if it's like 3D, as if it's like discs or cross sections. I like that. It really helps create that sideways gesture movement, the big C, and you've used these little circles here to help you to determine the width of the body as it moves around in this C shape. As for these are just outlines. I don't see any planning. I don't see any premeditated placement of shapes. I just see very, very basic lines. I don't want you to depend on lines. I see something here, but I want to see more of what you've done here, over here. I want to see those discs again. I want to see the way that you've determined the gesture line. The gesture line is one big C. I want to see those kinds of things. Line weight is a little bit challenged here. It's way too thick considering the movement here. You can create this movement in just a couple of gentle lines instead of thick heavy lines like this that make up for the lack of form. Don't use lines to make up for the lack of form or the lack of space or the lack of size. If you guys do that, if you thicken your lines just to make it seem like you're doing more work, that's a big mistake, and it's very obvious, and it just reads this person hasn't put enough time into their drawing practice or planning. Okay, so good job on this. Very well done. A little bit of help needed with these over here on the side. You're saying structure. I need a little bit more structure. I need a little bit more weight involved, and more planning to represent the weight that is anticipated. This is very well done. The rendering is okay. I'm just going to get rid of the head for now so that we can focus on the body. Okay, so I'm not sure if you use this from your own references or you've used it from something else, but stability-wise, it's pretty okay. As for balance and stability and the fact that it seems like different areas are responding to the weight, this is very, very flat, despite the fact that you painted it three-dimensionally. It's flat because of many reasons. The first reason is I can tell where you have trouble showing form. Here, 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 and here. These are all your problem areas. These are all areas that you had trouble with. This area is obvious because the shoulders are overly done. They're overly compensated, meaning that you've made the size a bit large to respond to the girth. She has a very masculine body despite the fact that it's feminine. Muscle structure is a guess. You've guessed your muscle structure. You've placed a gentle little shadow here. Even though the shadow that's here, remember as I told you, armpit, and then the large muscle of the bicep, and then the tricep, and then the shoulder, collarbone, and trapezius, or whatever it's called. Okay, and then the pectorals. Here, what I see is that you've drawn this muscle all the way up here near the collarbone. This is one big problem area. Where you're supposed to place this armpit thing is all the way down here. So that's why I see that these muscles of the shoulders are way too high. Okay, that's problem number one. Solved. Your muscles are your shoulders are too high, and you don't understand the basic distribution of the I know you did this before this class, but just so that we can reiterate. Planning will prove to you that it will show at the end that you've planned. Okay? Another problem area here is the elbows. Again, very large muscle or skeletal structure, despite the fact that it's female. Need a little bit more work there. The arms are a bit too long. The wrist. It doesn't make sense since she's pushing her elbow out. We need to see more of her fingers and less of the side. Okay, and then finally, again, symbolic work. Female, curved. Again, cartooning really affecting our understanding of form. When we draw something that has curves, we have to think about all that implies. Meaning there are hip bones, and this is all fat stretching downward. Hip bones. I see no hip bones or anticipation of hip bones, so we need to see more of that. So a bump or something to represent the hip bone and how it is the hip here in this area. Okay, and then the ankles. Again, very large. Things tend to get a bit small towards the ankles, especially since now that we see her skeletal structure is a bit more feminized. Before, very muscular shoulders, way too high. Armpit, non-existent. Shoulders, very, very tight and very tense. So remember, make sure the shoulders are aligned with the breast area, and hips are a bit too undefined. Okay? Close this, send it back. Again, we're just learning. These are just tiny little hints. I'm not trying to get the best of the best for these. I really just want you guys to discover this. One big issue with this is you're understanding line weight. Line weight is good, and form is good as well, but distribution or understanding of the muscle structure is challenged. Meaning that when you think about the leg muscle here, you've made so many lines that show me that you had trouble figuring it out. This line here has at least 2 or 3 lines trying to figure out the side of the thigh. The side of the thigh, considering the beautiful lines that you used, could have been made in just one or a couple strokes. Just one stroke could have used for that. You could have used for the side of the thigh, or one very, very well thought out stroke to represent the curvature and then the knee. That's one big issue here, is you don't know where to place these muscles. When you look at these figures, you're just trying to figure out the outline. Some of you guys forget that the body is made up of different chunks, different pieces put together, and then covered up with skin. Basically, that's it. It's just muscle and fat and bone covered up with skin, put together, kept together by one big blanket of skin. So what you guys are doing is you're drawing the skin without drawing everything else. You guys forget that there's all that other stuff in there. You guys forget the bone structure and the muscle structure and fat distribution. These are very, very important things, and you guys forget them. I see a little bit of muscle distribution in these areas here, this little line here. But again, it's very, very challenged that way, and I need to see more muscle understanding. So go in there. Go into some big book on muscle biology and the way muscles distribute around the body, and look at it. Look at the way that muscle works on the thigh. Go online and look at thigh muscles. I mean, there's tons and tons of information. You don't have to leave your house or go to a gym in order to do figure drawing. You can just look at them, observe them, look at the way they function. Do you see this whole side here? This is one big curve, and you could have exemplified this one big curve on the side with one basic stroke, and that would have been stroke used minimally to maximize the form. Just like I said earlier, use minimal. The way awesomeness is measured in drawings, literally the way awesomeness is measured. Awesomeness is an actual measurement tool. It's an actual measurement unit of measurement in art. Awesomeness is measured through minimal stroke. A minimal stroke maximizes form. Think of it as a chart. Okay? My messages on Skype. I haven't messaged anyone yet. I'll be sending these at the end. I just want to keep going. Night, Michael. Thanks for being here. So this is one big problem. Lines are very well done. A line weight is very, very good. Don't change your line weight. Whoever this is, please don't change your line weight, because it's very well done. I like the grittiness. I like the brush that you used. It's very well thought out. However, what you need to start doing, I need to start seeing gesture lines. I can't stress this enough. Plan, please plan. Please. It's going to help you figure out and draw a more concise figure. Gesture lines and research muscle plus fat distribution on humans. Your line weight is really good. I like the line weight, but I can't figure out what is what because you have hesitance. What? 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 What do you want? I'm almost done. Shh. Okay. What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Stupid OC. Okay. Just, yes, exactly what I said. Plan your image. Figure out where you want to place the muscles. After you place the muscles in there, figure out then after that how you want to create the line weight. I want to see planning. Planning will lead to a better, more concise drawing. Again, no gestures here. No gestures to help you create a stronger movement. So if this is like a zombie person, I see no gestures. Gestures help you create a convincing fluidity, stacking. Okay, if this is a zombie or whatever, I'm not sure what this is, why he's like that. But considering the fact that this person is sort of leaning over, I'm assuming it's like dragging himself along. All this stuff is important. Maybe his arms are just flailing behind and not really doing much to help the movement. That's why the movement is lacking and has very weak arch. What? 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 Oh, see. Shh. So gesture lines help you determine skeletal structure. Skeletal structure helps you determine muscle, and muscle helps you determine fat. So I need to see this order. I need to see these lines. If I don't see these lines, instant zero. I need to see that these lines have been considered. Okay? So gesture lines, I'm going to write this down for you. Leads to muscle, which leads to fat. And I need to see all these. Gesture line actually leads to skeleton. Sorry, gesture line / skeleton. Which leads to muscle, which leads to fat. Okay? I need to see this order, just like how when I draw lips video. How to draw lips video, or how to draw a nose. I give you guys a specific set of orders. Sure, Niall, go ahead and send it. Anyone else who wants to oh yeah, you can send it over now, Cam, if you want. Just like how just like how to draw noses video, I give you the Bob and Steve and the wife and the two slits, and you draw a nose. And lips, I give you the two corners. We think about the fat, the muscle, and the texture. In eyes, we think about the basic structure of the circle of the eye, and then we apply all the details and the blankets that wrap around the eye, and then we develop the eye. In body, it's the same thing. We need to plan it, gesture line, then skeleton, then muscle, then fat. This is all in order. You can't do, fat is basically skin here. Okay, fat is skin. You can't paint skin first. I don't want to see outlines of the body without considering muscle or skeleton. It's a very simple process. It's a very simple rule. I don't want to see outlines. If I see outlines, I will not critique it. I'm joking, I will critique it. But I'm just trying to be mean here. I will not be able, you won't be able to draw a good drawing if you think only in skin and fat. You think only that you need to outline it and that's it, you're a good artist. No, that's not how a good artist thinks. A good artist thinks about the way these things function. Function. Think function, and then you'll be able to go through with it. Okay? I'll send this to Oreo again. Now I need to look at all the others before I go to the faces. Gestures, no. Claire, Jacob. Figures 3, I looked at that. Pose, I'm not sure whose this is. Very well done. Save as, desktop. I'll try to do these within the time allowed. Try my best. Okay. Desktop, save. Come on. Oh, see, it doesn't let me drag. Save. And then Nilana. Desktop. Save. Let me close these so that I could. Okay. Yes. Oreo. Alright. Okay. Alright then. Skeleton figure by Niall. Niall, one big problem here is the third, your 3/4 understanding of the leg. It's very well drawn, the leg is well drawn, but what I see is one part of the body moving this way, one part of the body moving this way, and one part of the body moving this way. You probably think that fat, that the bone structure changes where it directs itself, but it's not like that. Bone structure governs the direction of muscle, and the muscle governs the direction of fat. And so what we have here, one of the biggest issues here, is the way you've shown this symmetry line to move. Here you have this symmetry line, very well thought out. But what I want to see is that the symmetry, or the horizontal symmetry, responds as well. This whole shoulder here. What happened in this drawing is that you were drawing the torso and then you wanted to draw the shoulder beside it, the arm beside it. However, there's layering that happens with the arm hanging in front. Like this. Other issue is that the way they place the shoulder here, the shoulder needs to be aligned, horizontal symmetry, think of that, this way. If you know this, if you know the horizontal symmetry of the shoulders, it's very easy to figure out the horizontal symmetry of the rest of the body, which including the hips, which is where the main issue was. And then after that, is this like a lean? Is she walking? Is she... No, not erase the whole figure. No, that's not what I'm trying to do here. Or I'm not sure what the gesture is. But the direction of the knee determines where the leg is pointing. So the knee is pointing this way to help keep the stability here. And then when we erase this leg, because the way this leg looked, it looked like it was at least like a foot longer than the other leg. Because not just because it was forward, but there was an issue with the way you made the lean look. So the two knees should face appropriately depending on where they're facing or where they're looking or the gesture. Not completely that way. What? Stinky. My cat's just crazy. And that way the position looks a little bit more focused than before, where the horizontal symmetry wasn't considered and one leg seemed super, super huge compared to the other leg. If she were to be floating, and one leg would be visible in height or length. The arm that you drew here, the arm is beside it, not as if it's attached there. It can't move. An arm has fatty areas and it can move. It can layer on top of other objects here. The arm can go here, the arm can go here. You have to show me that. Show that the arm can create that kind of movement. Yeah, I know, she's adorable, but she's a handful. This little kitten. She's an adult now. She's a year old. What? Oh my god. What is wrong with you? Hey, take it easy. Okay, so do you see what I mean by horizontal symmetry, Niall? When you're thinking in the 3/4 view for a body like this, you have to think about the way the horizontal symmetry clues you in on where the where the other shoulders are. The way your shoulders were before, Niall, if you look, one shoulder was high, one shoulder was low. Do you see this? But horizontal symmetry again helps you determine how to place these shoulders in response to each other. Close that. Next up is, one second. These by Cam. Some of these have really, really well done muscle forms. For instance, this one. You use the muscle here in the thigh, and I'm not sure if this was accidental or not, but the muscle here, the way it's distributed in the thigh, looks very, very well distributed here. The only thing is muscle placement, so the buttocks would need to be more hinted at. I need to see more of a joint and more of a connection with the rest of the body. This leg was a bit too short. We need the symmetry of the body to know where we're placing the breasts. The breast was simplified by... What? No, you can't go outside. No. No. Okay. I know, I'm a mean owner. But everything else was placed properly. Okay? So I need to see more knowledge of muscle structure. You guys can't expect to draw a very anatomically correct body without thinking about where all these muscles are. And line weight was okay, but again, gesture was not there. I need to see gesture lines. This is very well done here. But again, this whole area and this whole C shape here is overly exaggerated. Exaggeration is good in figure drawing, but not just yet. I need to see gesture lines. What? What? Ossie. What is it? Huh? Shush. Whiskers. Save. And then pose. This pose is very well done. Really good way of simplifying with simple strokes the mass of the buttocks. I like this this gesture line here. It's something of a gesture line in this area here. Very well done. Look at how well defined this line is. However, when it comes to the legs, because you have very, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong, but you have a bit of a problem. I like how you practiced it here as well. Very nicely done, the beanbag thing, or potato bag. But I like how you did this, but one big issue is your understanding of legs. Your legs sometimes need their own uh, gesture line because they're so long and they're such long objects that we need to simplify them through different kinds of other objects to help us figure out their length and the mass that is distributed therein. Okay, so stuff like this needs a little bit more planning, but this is very well planned out. This is good, except make your background a little bit darker so that people can look at it easier. Okay, but this area is really well done. Nice butt. This area is really well done. Nice shoulders. The arms are well simplified. Very well done. I like this. However, the legs had a little bit of trouble, and I think you started off this this line a little bit later, or earlier, I mean, so that the legs looked a little bit compressed. You started up and then down. It's not good to do that. Give yourself one big gesture. Figure out where you want to place everything. Then draw the line of the floor, and then draw the head, and then draw how everything else fits in. Okay? But legs need a little bit more work. We haven't covered legs yet, but a good look on anatomy websites, on a journal about the muscle structures of legs, and then you'll be able to. Istebrak, how do you actually plan out the figure when drawing? Gesture lines. Gesture lines are so important. Gesture lines help you plan it out. Planning out means anticipating everything that you're going to be doing. So if this person, one big gesture line here, meeting point, and then all of this, and then a gesture line for the legs that help keep the fluid movement, and then an arm, and then another leg, and then of course figure out the skeletal structure, and then the muscle structure, and the fat, and the way the fat overlaps. Fat here, fat there. Sorry about the retarded lines. Fat bundled up there. Fat on the thigh, moving downward. Fat on the shins. Okay, then this helps you figure out where so this guy's doing a nice little movement. I don't know what he's doing. This is how you plan a figure drawing. I love you guys very much. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to try to name each and every one of you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ari, Blue, Hobley, Breno, Wahaha, Charnico, Chio, Chris, Dan, Dirty Paws, Driller, L, Enigma, Erie, Fuchsia, Irish, Jacob, Jeppy, Karu, Lemur, Liriana, Moonsat, Nilana, Nimish, Noob, Number, Nile, Oreo, Penny, Remisi, Rio, Saru, Scarlet, Tenethal, and Tiger. Thank you, Saru, for being here. I haven't seen you in such a long time. So, anyways, thank you guys, and I love you guys very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.